Sortie 3 Alpha Debrief. AM-MECHS Platinum successfully led Operation Iron Talon to a major victory to exfiltrate the 13th Long-Range Strike Squadron from the Monologue system. Under an intense ComStar assault, the mercenary company was able to secure the makeshift airfield and provide cover, while the maintainers refueled and rearmed 3 wings of Marauder heavy bombers. The Vanguard Light Lance of ComStar MECHS was no match for AM-MECHS Platinum's aggressive initial push to secure the airfield, and most of the enemy's reinforcement waves were prevented from dropping to further contest the objectives due to Carrier Strike Group 68's domination of the enemy's fleet in orbit. Although one reinforcement wave of hover transports and a lance of mechs were able to temporarily apply pressure at the airfield, AM-MECHS Platinum made short work of them too, with the help of Intrepid's precise orbital bombardments. Upon the completion of rearming and refueling, just as the Marauder wings were preparing for takeoff toward Retribution in orbit, a light lance of assault mechs dropped at the end of the runway. They were from the mercenary company HOUNDS, under contract with ComStar, and intended to prevent a successful launch. AM-MECHS Platinum made short work of the Hellhounds, forcing 2 rival mercenary pilots to eject and killing a 3rd. The Marauders then successfully took off and landed in the hangar bays of Retribution, and CSG-68 made a hasty retreat from the Monologue system, back to its bastion in the Ionis system. Through achieving major victory, CSG-68 gained an extremely potent deep strike asset in the form of the 13th LRSS, and AM-MECHS Platinum filled its coffers with 1,625 war chest points. This was a hefty sum that they could use to acquire new units and upgrade current ones. At the rate of success they were having, ComStar was sure to take notice sooner or later. First of November, 3067. ComStar Propaganda Network Galactic-Wide Transmission.
The not-so-great houses continue to suffer wholesale military defeats at the hands of the unstoppable Blakist forces which liberate system after system. Nearly all resistance has already ceased. The Master, our astonishing warlord and leader, has executed a perfect strategic and operational campaign against our enemies. Insiders with access to his daily command briefings say that he predicts a full cessation of hostilities by November the 13th, at which point in time all great houses will have accepted his generous terms of unconditional surrender. ComStar forces continue to march throughout the Inner Sphere, welcomed with open arms by the oppressed peoples of an outdated and failed feudal system. Together, we all welcome the loving arms of the Word of Blake.
02 November, 3067. Terra, seat of power of the Word of Blake. The Master's Command HQ. The Master.
Why do they continue to resist? You, my so-called general staff, practically guaranteed complete operational victory by the end of October. How, then, is it that, despite the fall of all the great houses' capital systems and great encirclements, do they continue to muster materiel and forces to fight? How is it that we are helpless to protect our own communications grid? How is it that the Capellan Confederation cauldron holds out? We have them surrounded. Kill them already. What are you waiting for? You, Grand Admiral Dositz. How is it that elements of the League's Navy operate with impunity behind our own lines? It was purposefully centralized so that a decapitation of its C2 would cripple it. A ship as valuable, historic, and capable as Retribution should never have escaped the system. That damned hero of the people, Eisenhower, was supposed to be at Atreus on Planet HQ. His staff confirms his intent to attend. Explain to me, you useless swine, how Retribution can penetrate our lines and disappear without a trace, rescuing scattered League units with impunity. And your intelligence speaks of some mercenary company under contract. The first Free World's guards were completely decimated, were they not? How do they retain a company under contract if they do not exist? We torture its commander, Colonel Briggs, day after day. You should have seen the hatred in her eyes that peered out through the pain when she first laid eyes on me. The shock and horror, which coalesced into sheer will. These vermin all clearly still have the will to fight, regardless of our achievements thus far. There is no first Free World's guards, and yet they operate in unbridled fashion through a proxy. I need to know more of this Amex Platinum. You will find them and destroy them, along with Eisenhower. My personal guard interrogators will deal with Briggs. You are all failing. Finish the pockets in the Confederation. Kill the head of House Lau. Destroy the Lyran guerrilla forces spearing our side. Liquidate what remains of resistance throughout the sphere. Most importantly, find Retribution and whatever remnants operate with it. If you do not, or cannot, I will take a much more personal and intrusive interest in this endeavor. Eisenhower and his ilk have been kept close to the center of League power purposefully, and yet you let him slip through your fingers. You all disgust me. Be gone from my sight.
CSG 68, AM-MECHS Platinum, Personnel Dossier. Lieutenant Jim Raynor, call sign Marshall. Role, Veteran Tactical Commander. He's a former major in the Terran Army. Raynor resigned his commission after becoming increasingly disillusioned with military bureaucracy and political interference in battlefield command decisions. He's known for placing the lives of his soldiers above orders he considered reckless, and he eventually left the service rather than continue to operate under leadership he no longer trusted. He now works as an independent mercenary officer, taking contracts only from employers he believes are worth fighting for. He's a charismatic field leader, strong and loyal for his troops, and distrustful of political authorities. He favors direct battlefield leadership and is often seen fighting alongside his lance rather than coordinating from the rear. Gunnery Sergeant Sarah Kerrigan, call sign Ghost. Role, Elite Strike Operator. Former Special Operations operative in the Terran Army, Kerrigan served under Major Raynor during several high-risk operations. Widely regarded as one of the most capable soldiers in the unit, she specialized in infiltration and unconventional warfare. Following Raynor's departure from the military, Kerrigan chose to leave as well, joining him as part of his mercenary team. Rumors persist of an unknown biological anomaly detected during previous deployments. The condition appears dormant, but remains unexplained. She's highly focused and disciplined, quiet and calculating in combat, and fiercely loyal to Raynor. She's also known for aggressive flanking maneuvers and extremely accurate targeting. Lieutenant Buck, call sign Bulldog, role close quarters assault. Buck grew up alongside his cousin Took and has fought beside him for most of his life. The two joined the same military training program and eventually found themselves working as mercenary mech warriors. During a high-risk strike operation against a fortified enemy weapons platform, Buck and Took became separated from their senior officers. Forced to improvise, the pair used unconventional tactics to complete a secondary objective before rejoining the main force and helping finish the mission. Buck is practical and dependable, he has a strong sense of loyalty, and he's protective of his lance. He also excels at direct engagement tactics and often leads assault pushes. Staff Sergeant Took, call sign Wildcard, role recon and improvised tactics. Cousin of Lieutenant Buck and equally experienced in the field, Took has developed a reputation for unorthodox battlefield solutions. While often viewed as reckless by command staff, his creativity has repeatedly allowed his unit to escape otherwise impossible situations. He's bold and unpredictable, enjoys bending tactical doctrine, and completely loyal to Buck and his lance. He frequently improvises unconventional strategies during engagements. Captain Jeff Horner, call sign Spuds, role Strategic Command. Spuds is a former officer in the armed forces of the Federated Sons of House Davy. Horner eventually left the military after realizing advancement within the officer corps had effectively stalled. His nickname originated during his very first combat deployment, when his firing solution missed every enemy unit and instead it destroyed a farmer's potato field. Despite the embarrassing start, Horner has since developed into a capable and level-headed battlefield commander. He's calm and analytical, self-deprecating for his sense of humor, and skilled at coordinating battlefield logistics. He prefers careful tactical planning rather than aggressive assaults. Sergeant Michael Humphreys, call sign Link, role Heavy Weapons Specialist. Link originally served as a tank crewman before transitioning to battle mech operations. Humphreys remains convinced that conventional armored forces are still the backbone of any successful army. His call sign comes from an infamous streak of bad luck with autocannon ammunition feeds repeatedly jamming due to broken belt linkages during training exercises. He's competitive and stubborn, loyal to his squad, and constantly debates mech superiority versus tank warfare. He also heavily favors ballistic weapons and direct fire engagements. The Hellhounds are a small but aggressive mercenary company known for high-risk interdiction missions and hunter-killer contracts against rival mercenary units. Originally formed from the disgraced Lyran Commonwealth mech warriors in the late 3050s, the unit developed a reputation for brutal close-range engagements and a preference for fast strike operations against vulnerable targets. The company rarely engages in protracted campaigns. Instead, they specialize in ambushes, sabotage operations, and last-ditch interdiction missions, often arriving late in a battle to deliver decisive strikes. Because of this, the Hellhounds are frequently hired for assassination operations, denial of strategic assets, destruction of aerospace facilities, and anti-mercenary counter-operations. Their operational rating is veteran, discipline, low to moderate, aggression, extremely high. Hellhound's doctrine favors aggressive shock tactics, often closing distance rapidly to overwhelm opponents with concentrated firepower. However, this approach has also led to heavy casualties and prolonged engagements. Many House commanders consider them effective, but reckless. ComStar appears to employ them when a mission requires ruthless execution rather than subtlety. Engagement at Boulogne-Matroos. The Hellhounds' mission objective was to prevent the launch of the 13th Long-Range Strike Squadron Marauder bombers. The Hellhounds deployed a light assault lance directly onto the airfield runway, moments before the bomber launch sequence. They intended to destroy or disable the bombers before takeoff, or to destroy AM-MECHS Platinum. However, the plan failed due to the rapid response by Amex Platinum, orbital overmatch by Intrepid, and overwhelming defensive firepower. The outcome? 1 Hellhound mech destroyed, 2 pilots forced to eject. Strategic assessment. The Hellhounds are unlikely to abandon their contract with ComStar, particularly after it suffering a humiliating defeat. It is highly probable they will attempt to track Amex Platinum movements, launch a revenge operation, and seek a rematch in a future engagement. Threat rating. The Hellhounds are dangerous not because of their size, but because of their relentless pursuit of targets. Once they choose an enemy, they tend to hunt them until one side is destroyed. ComStar Contractor Dossier. Hellhounds Mercenary Company. Pilot Registry. Captain Victor Dragor. Call sign Warlord. Mech Banshee BNC 3S. Role Command and Breakthrough Assault. A former officer in the Lyran Commonwealth Armed Forces, Victor Dragor disappeared during a corruption investigation tied to illegal battlefield salvage operations. He resurfaced several years later, leading the newly formed Hellhounds Mercenary Company. Dragor is known for direct frontal assaults and intimidation tactics. His preferred strategy is to break enemy morale with overwhelming shock attacks rather than careful maneuvering. His personality is brutal and calculating. He's known to execute mercenaries who fail contracts, and he holds a personal grudge against rival mercenary companies. Dragor's Banshee is modified for close-range combat, often charging enemy lines while using heavy armor to absorb punishment. Lieutenant Kara Voss. Call sign Hellcat. Thunderbolt TDR-5S. Role Command Lance Fire Support. Former Free Worlds League militia officer who deserted during a political coup on Atreus. Voss later joined the Hellhounds, where her tactical discipline quickly elevated her to Dragor's second-in-command. She's cold and analytical, and she rarely speaks on the comms except for targeting calls. She's loyal to Dragor despite his brutality. Voss prefers mid-range bombardment, coordinating missile strikes with other Lance members. Sergeant Mikhail Resnick. Call sign Anvil. Orion ON1K. Role Heavy Brawler. Resnick served with the Draconis Combine Mercenary Battalion before defecting after a contract dispute. Known for his immense physical strength and fearless combat style, he's loud and aggressive, enjoys taunting opponents over open channels, and treats battle like a sport. Resnick pushes his Orion into brutal close-quarters firefights, often absorbing damage that would destroy lighter mechs. But he was killed during the Malone-Matruce engagement. Lieutenant Adrian Keller. Call sign Iron Fang. Cataphract CTF-3D. Anti-armor specialist. Little is known about Keller's early career. Intelligence suggests he served once as a private security mech warrior for corporate interests in the Capella Confederation. He's quiet and methodical, known for patience and careful target selection, and rarely wastes ammunition. He specializes in precision strikes against heavy targets, often disabling enemy mechs with surgical PPC hits. Sergeant Thomas Richter. Call sign Gunner. Hunchback HBK-4G. Role Shock Assault. Richter previously served in a planetary militia unit before joining the Hellhounds after a series of violent disciplinary incidents. He's reckless and impulsive, loves close-range ambushes, and frequently disobeys orders. His AC-20 armed Hunchback is infamous among mercenary circles for devastating ambush attacks. Lieutenant Silas Mordain. Call sign Spectre. Griffin GRF-1N. Role Recon and Harassment. A former scout mech warrior for Periphery Raider Band, Mordain is known for stealth and long-range harassment tactics. He's quiet and unnerving, known to stalk enemy units for hours before attacking, and keeps his helmet cameras running during combat to watch them for fun later. He uses speed and terrain to bait enemies into traps. Corporal Elena Varga. Call sign Valkyrie. Shadowhawk. SHD-2H. Role: Mobile Fire Support. A young but talented mech warrior recruited after winning several underground mech dueling tournaments. She's confident and competitive, known to challenge enemy pilots over open comms, and one of the few pilots who questions Dragor's tactics. She excels at hit-and-run engagements. Corporal Jace Torin, callsign Iron Pup. Wolverine WVR-6R. Role: Flanking Assault. Torin is the newest member of the Hellhounds and idolizes Captain Dragor. He joined the company hoping to earn glory in battle. He's overconfident, reckless, and eager to prove himself. Torin frequently attempts risky flanking maneuvers that either devastate enemies or get him into serious trouble. The Hellhounds remain a capable but diminished force after the Malone-Matruce defeat. With several pilots lost or wounded, Captain Dragor is likely to recruit replacement mech warriors, attempt a revenge engagement, and coordinate more closely with the ComStar forces. Captain Stephen Eisenhower was born in the Atreus system, capital of the Free Worlds League, in 3012. He was the son of a mid-tier university administrator, a humble beginning for a senior officer in the traditionally aristocratic League Navy. But he was highly gifted in martial arts and strategic thought through secondary school, and earned one of the few non-royal family or aristocratic family slots at Atreus' Naval Academy, the Merrick Dynastic Academy of Naval Warfare. During his time at the Academy, he excelled particularly in the study and application of aerospace operations and tactics. It seemed he was destined to command one of the League's Navy's fleet carriers one day, but he was earmarked for special collection by House Merrick's Security, Assistance, Federation, Evaluation, or SAFE intelligence agency upon his acceptance into the Academy. Despite supreme demonstration of the required skills of any young naval officer, his early career was repeatedly hamstrung by SAFE, operating from the shadows, puppeteering his path through the ranks in positions of low esteem, and with repeated administrative and arduous roadblocks placed in his way. SAFE assessed that the young Eisenhower had two major strikes against him. The first was the nature of his relatively low birth, which immediately indicated to analysts that he was an unknown quantity, and that he and his family would have precious little corruption and moral issues that could be used to ensure loyalty to House Merrick. The second was that of his family lineage, long forgotten or unknown by the family itself, to a certain democratically aligned general which had led a faction of a democratic alliance against a coalition of autocratic fascistic regimes over 1,000 years prior on Old Terra. Of course, SAFE had purged all knowledge of this era of Terran history, due to that period of humanity having overcome autocracy and dynastic rule for a time in favor of liberal democracy. What SAFE never could have imagined, however, was Eisenhower's tenacity and grit to overcome professional hardship time and time again. He was singularly committed to the naval profession, never married, never fathered any children, and repeatedly proved himself an invaluable young battlefield commander through the waning years of the Succession Wars. His command of the light frigate FWS Heroic during the Second Battle of Farpoint turned the tide of the orbital battle with the Capellan Confederation, and opened the path to relieve beleaguered League ground forces, which resulted in the final defeat of the Confederation during that period of the Succession Wars. He returned to Atreus a hero, and SAFE was powerless to continue to dim his star any longer, due to his popularity and battlefield acumen. In 3065, Captain General Thomas Merrick personally assigned the newly promoted Captain Eisenhower to his culminating major command of the League fleet carrier FWS Retribution. Undoubtedly, the command was granted based on merit, but also so that Thomas Merrick could better position Captain Eisenhower to a closer position to the higher echelons of fleet and sector commands, so that he could be kept under control should his loyalty ever come into question. Retribution was a storied ship, having seen combat at several pivotal battles and campaigns during the final years of the Succession Wars, including the battles of Farpoint, Farbanti, Aliwraith, Sosana, and Vitruvian. She underwent a major revitalization period from 3059 to 3065. Upon the overhaul period's ending, Captain Eisenhower inherited her as basically a brand new ship, upgraded with the newest technologies, larger hangar bays and support crews, and the most advanced air wing that the League Navy could offer. Captain Eisenhower was again kept close to the seat of power purposefully, as Retribution was assigned by Captain General Merrick personally to be the flagship of Atreus' home fleet commander, Rear Admiral DeLorean Dennis, a distant cousin of Thomas Merrick, and the direct naval support element to Atreus' home guard, the 1st Free Worlds Guards. Rear Admiral Dennis was killed at the General Staff HQ luncheon in the initial assault by ComStar forces on Atreus on 13 October 3067. But Captain Eisenhower acted swiftly and formed an ad hoc strike group in the form of CSG-68, Eisenhower's number on the hockey team at the Academy, with the League cruiser FWS Intrepid, in order to fight its way out of a blockade into a safe part of League space. Now, Captain Eisenhower, the relatively new mercenary company, AM-MECHS Platinum, under contract with the 1st Free Worlds Guards, and the subordinate units within the fledgling CSG-68 continue to seek retribution against the word of Blake, which has taken almost everything from them. But they have each other, firepower, and a thirst for revenge.